My name is Emily Carter. I was 32 years old when my wedding morning began not with laughter, music, or the sweet chaos of family, but with an eerie silence that pressed against the walls of my childhood home in Providence, Rhode Island. I had spent the night in my old bedroom, expecting to wake up to my mom bustling in the kitchen, my dad fussing with his tie, and my younger sister, Chloe, teasing me about nerves. Instead, all I found was stillness, and an envelope waiting for me on the kitchen table. Inside were words so sharp they cut deeper than any knife. "We're gone. Don't call us." My family had taken the money we had saved for my wedding and flown to Paris without me. On the very day I was supposed to marry the love of my life. They left me abandoned, betrayed, and humiliated. But what Chloe didn't know was that the man I was about to marry wasn't just any ordinary fiancé. He carried a secret that would turn my sister's smug betrayal into the biggest mistake of her life. What she thought would ruin me forever became the very thing that revealed just how far my family had underestimated me. If you're listening to this now, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe, because what started as the worst day of my life turned into a revenge story no one in my family saw coming. I grew up on the west side of Providence in a 2-bedroom duplex that smelled like pine sol on Saturdays and my mom's chicken soup on Sundays. My dad, Mark, taught algebra at the public high school and filled out the rest of the week with night shifts delivering packages for extra cash. My mom, Linda, was a nurse's aide at a rehab center off Elmwood Avenue who collected extra hours like coupons. Every holiday, every overnight. They were good people, the kind who put gas in your car without saying anything and left the last slice of pizza in the box for later, even when later never came. And then there was Chloe, 2 years younger, effortlessly sparkly in a way I never managed. If I was a lamp on a side table, Chloe was a chandelier. Teachers remembered her laugh before they learned her last name. When we were little, people stopped my mom in Shaw's supermarket to say, "Your younger one should model." They didn't mean anything by it, but words like that fall into a house and roll around like marbles under the furniture. You keep tripping on them for years. The favoritism didn't arrive like a storm. It seeped in like fog. I got sensible sneakers with thick soles every August, and Chloe got the ones with light-up heels because she'll actually wear them. If there was one seat left in the front of the minivan after church, it was, "Let Chloe step front. She gets carsick." I took the back without a fight, knees nudging a box of bottled water we'd forgotten to unload. When I made straight A's in 6th grade, Dad put my report card on the fridge and said, "Proud of you, Em." When Chloe landed the lead in the school musical the next year, the entire extended family came to both nights, and our aunt brought flowers as big as her head. On the car ride home, I held the flowers on my lap while Chloe scrolled through pictures. No one asked if I wanted to hold the playbill with my name in it under stage crew. Mom had a thing, she said, whenever things felt lopsided. Different kids, different needs. She wasn't wrong in the broadest sense, but as we got older, different needs seemed to mean Chloe's needs were immediate and mine could wait. When the guidance counselor suggested I take the SAT prep course, Mom sighed and said, "Those classes are a racket. You've always been good at school. You'll be fine." That same spring, Chloe asked about a cheer camp in New Jersey. $450 plus the uniform fee. We found the money. None of this made my parents villains. It made them tired human beings who mistook loudness for urgency and glitter for hunger. And because I was the quiet one, the one who didn't break down crying when plans changed, I became the family's elastic band. Stretchable, reliable, invisible until it snapped. There were small moments that hardened into memory. One January when I was 10, our heat cut out for 3 days, and Dad rigged 2 space heaters to keep the pipes from freezing. We all slept in the living room in a nest of blankets. In the blue television light, Chloe's nose started to bleed. "Dry winter air," Dad said, and he carried her to the bathroom like a queen on a litter. I trailed behind with a towel and the box of Band-Aids. When Chloe's nose stopped, Mom tucked her on the couch and kissed her forehead. Then she looked at me, realized I was shivering, and said, almost surprised, "Em, you must be freezing. Get another blanket." I told her I was fine and really believed it. In high school, the distance between Chloe and me turned from a hallway into a football field. I took AP classes, track in the spring, library shifts on weekends. Chloe tried everything that came with a uniform and applause. Dance team, drama, student council. I dated exactly once. A lanky boy named Aaron who came to my house to watch a movie and panicked when Dad asked him his GPA. "I don't know," he blurted. And I had to hold in a laugh because of course you know. After he left, Dad said, "You can do better." And for once I didn't argue. Chloe, meanwhile, had a knack for drama offstage. There were slammed doors and whispered phone calls at midnight. Rides she needed and rides she refused. When she missed curfew, Mom stayed up in a chair by the window. And when Chloe finally slipped in at 1:17 a.m., there were tears and promises and a late-night Denny's run to talk it out. The next morning, as I buttered toast, I said, "Shouldn't she be grounded?" Mom answered, "We handled it," and slid the last 2 strawberries onto Chloe's plate because she needs something sweet today. We weren't cruel to each other. That's important to say. There were afternoons, we shared headphones, 1 earbud each, listening to the same song on repeat. There was a snow day when we built a lopsided snowman and named him Mr. McFreeze in British accents until our cheeks hurt from laughing. But insecurity is a poor foundation for sisterhood. I watched Chloe like someone might watch the weather, alert for sudden shifts, calculating what to wear. I got into a small liberal arts college in Massachusetts with a partial scholarship. We celebrated with takeout and a bakery cake, where the icing letters smudged on the drive home. On the patio in the late light, Dad clapped my shoulder. "You're going places," he said, and I felt the balloon of pride rise in my chest. Chloe, who was still a junior, went quiet and then said, "I'll get out of here too. I'm not staying in Providence forever." Mom shot me a look that said, "Go easy. Don't gloat." I hadn't said a word. College was the first place that felt like mine. I loved the quiet thunk of thick books in my backpack, the library's basement tables where time fell away, the way professors said my last name like it meant something. I learned to fix wobbly chairs with a glue and made $9.25 an hour in the art gallery on campus, where I fell a little in love with people who made beauty out of nothing. On breaks, I came home to the same duplex and the same rules. Chloe had a new boyfriend, a bartender named Evan who called me sis and borrowed Dad's socket wrench without asking. When he and Chloe fought on the porch at midnight, Mom begged me to stay out of it, then asked me to drive Chloe to school because her eyes are puffy and she shouldn't be behind the wheel. I drove. Of course I drove. Senior year. While I applied for internships and worried about rent, Chloe announced she found a perfect apartment with a view of the river. The rent was almost a third of Mom's monthly pay. "It's a steal," Chloe insisted, flashing pictures of a balcony the size of a postage stamp. Dad asked, "How will you afford it?" Chloe hugged him and chirped, "I'll figure out. You always taught me to aim high." Later that night, I heard our parents whispering in the kitchen. "Maybe we can help with a deposit," Mom said, "just to get her started." I lay in bed doing the math out of habit. It didn't add up unless something else gave. The something was usually me. When I accepted a low-pay assistant curator position at a small contemporary gallery in downtown Providence, there was no banner on the porch, just Dad's practical advice about saving 10% and Mom's suggestion to pack lunches. It wasn't cruel. It was ordinary. But when Chloe later posted a photo with the caption, "Finally living my dream #Riverview," I noticed the second name on the lease guarantor line in the corner of the shot, my dad's. Work became my refuge. I learned to hang a show so the sightlines pulled your eye from one piece to the next like a melody. I learned how to talk to donors who wanted to buy something that matched their couch and gently steer them towards something they'd still love in 10 years. I got good at reading a room and quietly fixing what wasn't working. I told myself that was a skill. Nobody sees the thread, but everything holds. Mom and I had a ritual on my days off when our schedules aligned. Coffee at a bakery on Cranston Street, the booth near the window if we could snag it. She'd tell me stories about patients who recovered against the odds. I'd tell her about a new artist with a sculptural piece made of welded spoons. Sometimes she listened like she meant it, and sometimes she glanced at her phone and said, "Chloe's landlord called. Her check bounced. We're going to float her a week." She said it the way people say, "It might rain." Resigned but not surprised. One Thanksgiving, Chloe arrived late in a camel coat, smelling like vanilla and urgency. She threw her arms around Mom and said, "I got an interview at a marketing firm in Boston." We cheered and scooped mashed potatoes, and she held court at the table describing an office with glass walls, a kombucha tap, and a rooftop deck for creative breaks. When she left the room, Dad murmured, "We'll need to help with the commuter pass if she gets it." I wanted to ask who would help me when I bought a used bus pass and ate peanut butter crackers between shifts. But there are questions you learn not to voice because the answers will be both honest and devastating. As we moved into our 20s, Chloe and I settled into roles we hadn't auditioned for. She was the one who reached for more. I was the one who made do. She sparkled, I studied. When Chloe's relationships imploded, she slept on my couch and cried until dawn, and I brewed tea and said, "You're brave. You'll land on your feet." When my car needed new brake pads, I quietly picked up a second weekend shift. If you ask my parents, they would swear they loved us equally. I believe them. Love can be equal while attention is not. Love can be constant while investment is lopsided. The ledger in a family isn't written in dollars. It's written in who gets the benefit of the doubt, who is assumed capable, who is assumed fragile. In our house, fragility earned resources. Capability earned tasks. The summer I turned 30, I started to sense a change in myself. A soft impatience that bloomed into resolve. I wanted to be seen not just as the reliable oldest daughter, but as a woman with a life that required more than patchwork solutions. Not a chandelier, maybe, but a lighthouse. Quiet, yes, but impossible to ignore when the fog rolled in. That was the version of me who met the man I would marry. That was the version who believed, maybe naively, that when the time came, my family would show up because that's what families do. I hadn't yet learned what happens when people who have always counted on your elasticity discover you finally reach the edge of your stretch. After college, I built my life one careful step at a time. While Chloe's choices often resembled leaps across a canyon, I approached the world like someone laying bricks, one after another, even if it meant long days and sore hands. My job as an assistant curator at the Providence Contemporary Arts Center didn't pay much more than a waitress's salary, but it filled me with purpose. I learned to stretch every dollar, eating canned soup for dinner so I could afford a secondhand bookshelf or a coat that would last more than one season. Every exhibition demanded late nights and endless problem-solving. Sometimes I stayed past midnight, rearranging lighting until a sculpture finally cast the right shadow. I swept floors myself when volunteers failed to show. I patched frames, carried crates heavier than I looked capable of, and always showed up early. "Emily, you're the backbone here," my director once told me, and though she meant it as a compliment, I couldn't help hearing the truth beneath it. Backbones carry weight but rarely get noticed. At the same time, Chloe seemed to stumble into opportunities simply because people wanted her around. She landed a marketing internship at a firm in Boston, the kind of job I would have killed for, even though she admitted over wine one night, "I only got it because Evan's roommate's uncle plays golf with the CEO." She laughed, hair tossed back, while I sipped my drink and forced a smile. I never envied her beauty or charm. What stung was how she treated effort like an accessory she could wear or discard. When the internship ended, Chloe quit after 3 months, declaring, "The hours are brutal, and I need time to find myself." She moved back home, rent-free, while I scraped by to cover bills. There were sacrifices I never admitted aloud. When my car's transmission failed, I sold a set of my grandmother's china at a consignment shop to help cover the repair. I never told my parents. I didn't want them to feel guilty. When our gallery director asked me to attend networking events in Boston, I went even when I couldn't afford the train ticket, choosing between a week of oatmeal breakfasts or missing the chance to be seen. One winter, I caught pneumonia after working 3 weeks straight on a major exhibit. My boss insisted I stay home, but I dragged myself in anyway, feverish and pale, because Chloe had once missed an entire semester of college classes over stress, and I couldn't bear to be the unreliable daughter too. Mom fussed over Chloe when she had the flu, driving across town to drop off soup. When I called to say I was sick, she said gently, "Get some rest, honey," before asking if I could Venmo Chloe $40 for gas money. I sent it, coughing so hard my ribs ached. Still, I pushed forward. I applied for grants, wrote proposals, and volunteered to mentor high school students interested in art. It mattered to me to give others what I never had. Someone who believed their quiet persistence could bloom into something. The nights were lonely, yes, but they built me into a woman who could stand on her own. The irony was, my sacrifices were invisible precisely because I made them without complaint. I kept my head down, thinking the world would eventually notice. But in my family, endurance was mistaken for ease, while chaos was mistaken for need. Chloe stumbled and the net appeared. I balanced on the wire for years and heard only applause when I didn't fall. And yet, through all of this, I carried a fragile hope. That one day, when it truly mattered, when I found the person I wanted to spend my life with, when I needed my family's love without conditions, they would show up. I had given them every reason to trust me, every reason to believe I was worth standing beside. I didn't know then that my sacrifices had set a precedent. They had come to expect me to manage alone, and that expectation would come crashing down on the day I needed them most. The morning of my wedding was supposed to hum with joy. I had pictured the clatter of coffee cups, the chatter of last-minute instructions, the sound of my mother fussing with bobby pins, while Chloe cracked jokes about cold feet. Instead, my childhood home was so silent I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. I patted down the hall, my satin robe brushing against my legs, calling out, "Mom? Dad? Chloe?" No response. My parents' bed was made tight, pillows stacked neatly, as if they hadn't slept there at all. Panic started as a whisper in my chest and spread like fire. By the time I reached the kitchen, my hands are trembling. There on the table lay a cream-colored envelope with my name scrawled in Chloe's looping handwriting. I tore it open, breath shallow. "Emily, by the time you read this, Mom, Dad, and I will be in the air, headed to Paris. Don't bother calling. We've turned our phones off. The money that was meant for your wedding, it's covering this trip instead. After all their years of sacrifice for you, they deserve something better than funding a cheap little garden party for you and some nobody. Don't pretend you don't know how much they've done for you. It's time they enjoy life, not pour it all into you again. Maybe you'll finally learn to stand on your own. Bon voyage." The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. They had left me on my wedding day. My knees gave out and I dropped into a chair, the letters shaking in my hands. For 32 years I had bent, sacrificed, swallowed disappointments, and now at the moment I needed them most, my family had chosen my sister's lies and their own selfish escape. The doorbell rang. I stumbled to answer it and found Ryan, my fiancé, on the porch, tuxedo jacket slung over his shoulder. His blue eyes widened when he saw my face streaked with tears. "Emily, what happened?" Wordlessly, I shoved the letter into his hand. He read it quickly, his jaw tightening with every line. By the time he finished, his expression was stone. "They abandoned you," he said, voice low, dangerous. "On your wedding day." We can't go through with this," I whispered. "The money's gone, the guests. What am I supposed to tell them? We can't afford." Ryan cupped my face, forcing me to meet his eyes. "Listen to me. We are getting married today. Not in some courthouse. Not in some half-hearted way. You are going to have the wedding you deserve. I will handle everything." I shook my head. "But how?" He took a deep breath. "There's something you don't know about me. I wanted to tell you before, but I was waiting for the right time." His hands dropped to his sides, fists clenched. "Emily, my family isn't just comfortable. We're wealthy. Extremely wealthy." The world tilted. "Wealthy?" "My father owns Caldwell International, the real estate conglomerate. Hotels, resorts, developments all over the world. We're billionaires." I stared at him, stunned. "You're joking." He shook his head. "I didn't want money to be part of what we had. I needed to know you loved me for me. That's why I never said anything. But right now, I'm telling you because I'm about to use every resource I have to make sure this day doesn't destroy you." I opened my mouth, but he was already dialing numbers, his voice sharp, commanding, a side of him I'd never seen. "Get Vivian. Tell her I need a full setup in 6 hours. Ballroom, flowers, catering, everything. Money isn't an issue." Within an hour, his parents arrived. Caroline, elegant and warm, swept me into her arms. "My dear girl, we'll fix this," she promised, brushing tears from my cheeks. Behind her, William Caldwell strode in, exuding quiet power. "The Langford Hotel's ballroom is ours for tonight," he said simply. I blinked. The Langford was the most exclusive venue in Boston, booked years in advance. "But how?" "We own it," Ryan said firmly. From that moment, the day transformed into a fever dream. Designers rushed in with gowns still in garment bags from Fashion Week. Florists arrived with armfuls of orchids, peonies, and roses, their petals cool against my overheated palms. A hair and makeup team set up in my childhood living room, turning it into a backstage dressing room. And then, the first twist, a local news crew appeared. Caroline leaned down and whispered, "Ryan thought you might like the world to see how this day turns out. For the people in Paris." For a moment, I hesitated, but then I imagined Chloe sipping champagne at Charles de Gaulle, smug in her victory. "Let them film," I said, steel hardening in my chest. By late afternoon, the Langford's grand ballroom had been remade into an enchanted garden. Chandeliers glowed above cascading walls of white roses. Musicians tuned their instruments in the corner, while waiters carried trays of champagne. I slipped into a couture gown that fit as if it had been made for me, my reflection unrecognizable. I no longer looked like the forgotten daughter. I looked like a woman who had been chosen. As guests began to arrive, our original friends and family friends, now joined by Boston's social elite, the stories spread like wildfire. Ryan Caldwell was marrying today, in a wedding planned in hours but executed with breathtaking perfection. Cameras rolled as I walked down the aisle, escorted not by my father, but by Ryan's grandfather, who whispered, "It's my honor, my dear." The ceremony was short, but searingly beautiful. When Ryan said his vows, his voice trembled with conviction. "Emily, I promise to be your family, your fiercest protector, your truest companion, in joy and in betrayal, in triumph and in trial." As we kissed, the ballroom erupted in applause. I caught sight of the news cameras and felt a flash of vindication. Paris was watching. The reception was a dream. 6 courses prepared by world-class chefs, a cake taller than me. A jazz band that gave way to a famous pop singer Ryan had flown in that afternoon. Guests whispered about the speed and splendor of the transformation, calling it the wedding of the year. But then came the second twist. As we danced, my phone buzzed. Against my better judgment, I glanced at it and froze. A social media notification showed a tag photo of my family in Paris, watching the live broadcast of our wedding on the hotel bar's television. Chloe's face in the background was pale, her champagne glass midair. The caption from a stranger read, "When you skip your sister's wedding and then find out she married into billions." Oops. The vindication was electric. My family's betrayal had not only failed, it had backfired spectacularly. They hadn't just abandoned me. They had abandoned the chance to be part of something far greater than they could have imagined. And yet, as the music swelled and Ryan spun me across the dance floor, a knot tightened in my chest. Because, while the world saw a fairy tale, I still saw the truth. My family had chosen to leave me. They hadn't been tricked or coerced. They had made a choice. And no amount of diamonds or chandeliers could erase the hollow ache of that reality. The night of the wedding ended like a dream too dazzling to hold. Guests toasted, cameras flashed, and Ryan's family embraced me with open arms. But when the ballroom emptied and the last violin note faded, I found myself sitting alone in the bridal suite, veil discarded on the floor, staring at my reflection. The woman in the mirror wore diamonds and silk, yet her eyes brimmed with loneliness. My lips curved in a practiced smile for the cameras, but inside I was hollow. I kept replaying the morning in my mind. The empty house, the silence, the cruel words in Chloe's letter. For all the grandeur of what Ryan had given me, the image that lingered was my mother's handwriting on a note she hadn't even signed. The sound of my father's absence where his footsteps should have been. I thought about every sacrifice I'd made, every moment I had told myself they'll see, one day they'll see. But on the day I needed them most, they hadn't just failed to show up. They had left the country. Ryan knocked gently before stepping inside. He found me curled on the chair, gown spilling like a puddle around me. "Emily," he whispered, kneeling beside me, "what's wrong?" "Today was beautiful." I shook my head. But it wasn't supposed to be like this. My dad should have walked me down the aisle. My mom should have helped me into this dress. Chloe should have been by my side. And instead, my throat closed. Instead, they left me like I was nothing. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away, guilt gnawing at me. "I'm grateful, Ryan, more than you know. But part of me feels like today wasn't mine. It was borrowed, as if I've stepped into your world, wearing clothes that don't belong to me, while the world points cameras and waits to see if I'll stumble." His face softened, but his voice was steady. "Emily, this day was yours because you chose to stand, even when they tried to break you. Money didn't create that strength, you did." Still, the ache persisted. That night, when the sweet grew quiet, I cried silently into the pillow, mourning not just my family's absence, but the years of blind hope that had led me here. I grieved the childhood version of me, who had waited for recognition that never came. The days that followed should have been filled with newlywed bliss, but shadows clung to me. On our honeymoon, even as I stood barefoot on a private Caribbean beach, turquoise waves kissing the shore, I found myself scanning my phone compulsively. Notifications from my family flooded in once the wedding news broke. My mother begging for a call, my father apologizing in halting sentences, Chloe ranting and then pleading. Each message twisted the knife. Because if they had believed in me, if they had trusted me, they would never have abandoned me in the first place. They only cared now because they realized what they had lost. Not me, but the connections, the power, the wealth they hadn't known existed. At night, when Ryan drifted to sleep beside me, I lay awake listening to the ocean and wondering what kind of daughter, what kind of sister I really was. Had I failed to make myself worth staying for? Or had I finally seen the truth that I could have bled myself dry with sacrifices and still never been enough for them? The pain was a quiet, relentless tide. It pulled at my heart until I felt stripped bare. For the first time, I questioned not just my family's love, but the foundation of who I was. Was I still Emily Carter, the dependable daughter? Or had they abandoned her completely, leaving me to start over as someone new? One thing was clear. Before I could find peace, I had to confront the betrayal head-on. By the time we returned from our honeymoon, the story of our wedding had already spread beyond Boston. Headlines in glossy magazines called it the society event no one saw coming. Social media buzzed with snapshots of me in the couture gown, Ryan at my side, the Caldwell empire woven into every caption. Strangers praised the mystery bride, who had captivated the heir to a fortune. And then came the texts, hundreds of them from my family. My father wrote long messages dripping with regret. "We thought we were protecting you. We didn't know Ryan's background. We were misled by Chloe." My mother's tone swung between desperation and self-pity. "Please call Emily. We're your parents. We made a mistake, but we love you. Don't shut us out." Chloe, however, was different. Her messages grew frantic, riddled with typos. "I didn't know he was a billionaire. You should have told me. We're sisters. We're supposed to share everything." Then her tone shifted. "I didn't mean for things to go this far. Please let me explain." For weeks, I ignored them, but eventually, curiosity gnawed at me. I needed answers, not to forgive, but to understand. So I agreed to meet them in a quiet corner of a downtown restaurant. The air was thick with unease when I arrived. My parents looked smaller, guilt etched into their faces. Chloe sat rigid, her usual confidence replaced by something rawer. Fear, perhaps, or shame. I didn't waste time. "Why?" I asked, voice steady. "Why did you believe Chloe? Why did you abandon me without even asking me if it was true?" Dad's voice cracked. "Chloe told us Ryan planned to leave you at the altar. She said she'd overheard one of his friends bragging about it. We thought, God forgive us, we thought disappearing would save you humiliation." I turned to Chloe, my stomach twisting. "You lied." She folded her arms, but her voice trembled. "I didn't know he was Ryan Caldwell. I thought you were marrying some broke guy you picked up at the gallery. I couldn't stand watching you get everything I wanted. Happiness, stability, a future. So yes, I lied. I wanted to ruin it. I didn't think it would Her voice faltered. I didn't think it would end like this. Her honesty, if you could call it that, landed like a slap. She hadn't been protecting me. She hadn't even been motivated by my parents' well-being. It was jealousy, raw, festering, and selfish. Mom reached for my hand, tears streaming. We made a terrible mistake, Emily. Please, we need a chance to make this right. I pull my hand back. You didn't just make a mistake. You chose to trust a lie over me. You chose Chloe's drama over my truth. And you left me on the most important day of my life. Silence fell heavy. Chloe's eyes darted toward me, desperate. But you got your fairy tale ending. Look at you now, living in luxury. The whole world knows your name. Doesn't that make up for it? I leaned forward, my voice low but sharp. You still don't get it, Chloe. None of this. I gestured to the diamond on my finger, to the life I now lived. Makes up for the fact that my own family decided I wasn't worth standing beside. Money can buy chandeliers and ballrooms, but it can't buy the moment when your mom should have zipped your dress or your dad should have walked you down the aisle. You stole that from me, and I'll never get it back. Chloe flinched. My parents bowed their heads. For the first time in my life, the power in our family dynamic shifted. Not through shouting or drama, but through truth laid bare. I left that restaurant without making promises. I didn't slam the door, didn't scream, didn't declare forgiveness or disownment. I simply said, if you want me in your life, you'll have to earn it. My love is no longer automatic. That was the true revenge, not cutting them off, but forcing them to confront the reality that I was no longer the elastic band holding the family together. They would have to bend this time, not me. And as for Chloe, her downfall unfolded faster than I could have imagined. Screenshots of her deleted rant about my wedding leaked online. People called her the jealous sister, mocking her for missing the chance of a lifetime. Her social media followers dwindled, job interviews evaporated, and whispers followed her in every room. She had built her identity on charm and image, and both had shattered. Plot twist number 1. Chloe tried to move to Boston to start over, but every attempt was met with polite rejections. Word travels quickly in the city, especially when the Caldwell name is involved. Without my support, doors stayed closed. Plot twist number 2. Months later, I learned that Chloe had been the one pushing my parents to use the wedding fund for Paris. Not because she cared about their happiness, but because she had a ticketed event planned there with a man she was seeing. When he ghosted her halfway through the trip, she was left stranded, broke, and furious. The family adventure had been nothing more than her cover story. In the end, my revenge required no plotting, no grand gesture. Their betrayal had already set their own trap. All I had to do was step back and let consequences do what they do best. Ryan often asked if I felt satisfied, seeing them stumble. The truth? Satisfaction wasn't the right word. What I felt was freedom. For the first time in my life, I no longer carried their weight. Their choices belonged to them. My life, my joy belonged to me. 2 years have passed since that day, and I no longer measure my worth by whether my family chooses to stand beside me. I've built a new definition of family, one rooted in loyalty, truth, and love freely given, not bargained or demanded. Ryan and I have a home filled with laughter, late-night conversations, and a peace I never knew I could have. My parents are slowly trying to rebuild trust, but Chloe remains on the outskirts of my life. A reminder that betrayal leaves scars even when the wound has closed. If there's one lesson my story proves, it's this. Sometimes the people you expect to hold you up are the first to let go. And sometimes the family you choose turns out to be stronger than the one you're born into. What would you have done in my place? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget